I have 14 notebooks, black composition books, the kind you'd use in school, each one filled front to back with names, dates, details of how they died. 237 people. That's how many patients I've lost in 8 years as an ICU nurse. I can recite most of their names from memory, tell you their ages, their diagnoses, what their families said in those final moments. I'm Morgan Keller, and I started keeping these journals as a way to process grief. Now, they've taken over my life. The first notebook started innocently. Year 1, I lost my first patient, Harold Chen, 71, end-stage heart failure. I went home that night and couldn't stop thinking about him, about his wife holding his hand, about the way his breathing changed at the end, about whether I'd done everything I could. So I wrote about it. Just a page, maybe 2. His name, what happened, how I felt. It helped, made me feel like I'd honored him somehow, like his death meant something because I'd remembered it. After my second loss, I did it again. Then my third. By the end of year 1, I had a notebook half filled with entries about the patients I'd lost. My manager said it was a healthy coping mechanism, journaling about difficult cases, processing the emotional weight of the work. At first, that's all it was. But somewhere around year 3, it became something else. I wasn't just writing about my feelings anymore. I was documenting everything. Every detail I could remember about each patient. What they looked like, what their families wore, what the room smelled like, conversations I'd had with them if they were conscious, conversations I'd overheard among their families. I told myself it was about honoring them, bearing witness, making sure they weren't forgotten. Really, I was becoming obsessed. Year 4, I started looking up obituaries. Every patient I lost, I'd search for their obituary online, read it multiple times, sometimes print it out and paste it in my journal. I wanted to know about their lives, not just their deaths, who they'd been before they became my patient. Margaret Foster, 58, septic shock. I found her obituary. She'd been a teacher for 30 years, had 2 daughters and 4 grandchildren, loved gardening. The funeral was on a Tuesday. I went. Took the day off work, drove an hour to a church in a town I'd never been to, sat in the back during the service. Her daughter spoke. Her husband cried. I cried too, harder than I'd cried about anything in my own life. No one knew who I was. No one knew I'd been the nurse who'd held Margaret's hand when she died. I left before the reception, drove home, and wrote 5 pages about the funeral in my journal. That should have been a warning sign, but it felt meaningful, like I was completing the circle somehow. I started going to more funerals. Not all of them, that would be impossible. I was losing patients every couple of weeks. But when I could find the information, when it was close enough, when my schedule allowed, I'd go, sit in the back, listen to people talk about the person I'd only known at their worst. Year 5, I had 3 notebooks filled. I started a memorial wall in my home office, printed photos of obituaries, news articles about some of the younger patients who'd had tragic deaths, sympathy cards that families had sent to the unit. I arranged them on a corkboard. Then I needed a second corkboard, then a third. My husband asked what I was doing. I told him I was honoring the patients I'd lost. He looked uncomfortable but didn't push it. By year 6, I had 6 notebooks and an entire wall covered in death. My office had become a shrine to loss. Every spare moment at home, I was in there, reading through old entries, adding new ones, updating the wall when I found new information. I'd search for my patients' names on social media, find their Facebook pages, look through their photos, read their posts. I wanted to know them as people, not just as the dying patients I'd cared for in their final days. Sometimes I'd find their family members' pages, see their grief in real time. The posts saying, "I can't believe you're gone," or "1 week since we lost you," or "Your birthday today and you're not here." I'd read every comment, every memory people shared. I told myself it was compassion, that I was staying connected to the humanity behind the medical cases. My husband said it was unhealthy. "You spend more time with dead people than with living ones," he said. "You come home from work and go straight to that room. You barely talk to me anymore. You're always reading those notebooks." "I'm processing," I said. "This is how I deal with the trauma of the work." "This isn't processing," he said. I don't know what this is, but it's not healthy." I started memorizing details. Could tell you not just the names and dates, but specific things. David Morrison, 43, motorcycle accident, died April 15th. His daughter was getting married that summer because his wife mentioned it while we were removing life support. James Pack, 71, stroke, died September 3rd. He'd been a postal worker, had a golden retriever named Scout. Anna Calabresi, 29, overdose, died January 8th. Her mother wore a purple cardigan and kept saying she was trying so hard to get clean. 237 people, and I could tell you something personal about almost every one of them. My kids started asking why I spent so much time in my office. "What are you always doing in there, Mom?" "Just work stuff," I'd say. Because how do you explain to a child that you're maintaining detailed records of everyone who's died under your care, that you're cataloging grief? Year 7, my therapist, I'd started seeing one finally at my husband's insistence, asked me about the journals. "How many do you have now?" I said 10, almost 11. "And you read them regularly?" "Yes, to remember, to make sure I don't forget anyone." "Morgan," she said carefully, "I'm concerned that this has gone beyond healthy processing. This sounds more like rumination, intrusive thoughts. Have you considered that you might be experiencing vicarious trauma?" I told her I was fine, that this was my way of honoring the dead, that someone needed to remember them. But at what cost? What is this remembering costing you? I didn't answer. Because I knew it was costing me my marriage, my relationship with my kids, my ability to be present in my actual life, my mental health. But I couldn't stop. Last year, I had a patient, Emma Richardson, 23, car accident. She died after 3 days in the ICU. I talked to her parents for hours, tried to prepare them, sat with them during the withdrawal of care. At her funeral, I saw something that broke me. Her best friend gave a eulogy, talked about inside jokes, favorite memories, plans they'd had for the future. And I realized I knew more about Emma's death than anyone in that room. I knew medical details, timeline, exact moment her heart stopped. But these people knew her life. They knew who she actually was. I'd been collecting deaths, hoarding grief, but I didn't actually know any of these people. That night, I sat in my office, surrounded by 14 notebooks and hundreds of photos of dead people. And I felt this overwhelming horror at what I'd become. But I still couldn't throw anything away, couldn't stop documenting, couldn't stop attending funerals. Year 8 now. I'm up to 14 notebooks. The wall has expanded to 2 walls. I have a spreadsheet. I made a spreadsheet, cross-referencing names with dates, ages, causes of death, whether I attended the funeral. My husband moved out 3 months ago. Said he couldn't watch me disappear into this obsession anymore, that I'd become a ghost, haunted by people who weren't even haunting me. I was haunting them. My kids, teenagers now, barely want to visit me. Last time they came over, my daughter accidentally opened my office door. Saw the walls covered in obituaries and memorial cards, the notebooks stacked on the desk. "What is all of this?" she asked, horrified. I didn't know how to explain, so I just said, "People I've cared for." She left, called her father to pick her up early. I heard her on the phone. "Dad, it's like a weird shrine. There are pictures of dead people everywhere. It's creepy." My son won't come over at all anymore. My therapist increased our sessions to twice a week. Says I'm experiencing complicated grief, that I've been using documentation as a way to control the uncontrollable, that I need to find a way to let go. But how do I let go? If I throw away the notebooks, it's like those people never mattered, like their deaths meant nothing. They matter to their families, my therapist says. Their families are remembering them. You don't have to carry all of that. But I do, because I was there. I was present for the worst moment of their lives. Someone has to remember the details. Someone has to make sure they're not forgotten. Last week, I was off work and spent 6 hours reading through all 14 notebooks, cover to cover, reliving every death, every conversation, every moment of grief I'd witnessed. When I finished, it was 2 a.m. I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Called the crisis line. The counselor asked if I was safe, if I was having thoughts of hurting myself. I wasn't. I was just drowning in 8 years of accumulated death. I went to work the next day. Lost another patient. Marcus Williams, 67, respiratory failure. His son played guitar at his bedside near the end, some song about going home. I came home that night and wrote 6 pages about Marcus. Added his obituary to the wall. Stayed up until 4 a.m. searching for his family's social media, reading their grief posts. My phone rang. My husband, ex-husband, now legally. "The kids told me you're getting worse. Morgan, you need more help than therapy. You might need, I don't know, intensive treatment. This has gone too far." "I'm fine," I said, standing in a room wallpapered with death, surrounded by notebooks full of people who are gone. "You're not fine. You've built a mausoleum in your house. You're living with ghosts. When was the last time you did something that wasn't work or this obsession?" I couldn't remember. I'm in my office right now. It's 3 a.m. I should be sleeping. I work in 6 hours. Instead, I'm reading through notebook number 7, year 5, 29 patients that year. Patricia Walsh, 82, heart failure. Her granddaughter sang to her at the end. Kevin Tran, 51, liver failure. His husband read him poetry. Sarah Mitchell, 19, drowning. Her mother screamed. I can still hear it. I know their names. I know their stories. I carry their deaths with me every day. And I'm starting to think that maybe my ex-husband is right. Maybe I'm not honoring them. Maybe I'm just holding on to grief because letting it go means facing my own life, my own emptiness, my own fear that without these deaths to document and remember, I don't have any meaning. My daughter's graduation's next month. She didn't invite me. Sent the announcement to her father's house, not mine. I miss so much of her life sitting in this room with the dead. There's a funeral tomorrow. James Chen, patient I lost last week. Service is at 2 p.m. I'm scheduled to work, but I've already requested the time off. My therapist said I shouldn't go, that I need to start setting boundaries, that attending funerals of patients is crossing a line, but I can't not go. James's wife held my hand while he died. She told me I was an angel. She said I made the worst day of her life bearable. How can I not show up for her? Even though showing up for her means not showing up for my own life again. I'm looking at 14 notebooks, 2 walls of obituaries, 8 years of documented death, and I don't know how to stop. Because if I stop remembering them, who will? And if I'm not the keeper of these deaths, then who am I?
I stayed 3 hours past my shift yesterday to sit with Mrs. Alvarez's daughter while her mother died. I held her hand, I explained what was happening to her mother's body, I got her tea, I stayed through the final breath and for an hour afterward, just sitting with her grief. My own daughter's text came through halfway through. "Mom, are you coming to my piano recital? It starts in 20 minutes. I didn't answer until it was over. Told her there was an emergency. There wasn't. Mrs. Alvarez had been actively dying for hours. We all knew it was coming. Her daughter had plenty of support. The chaplain was there, 2 other family members, a social worker. She didn't need me, specifically, but I needed to be there. I'm Catherine Wells, ICU nurse for 13 years, and I've become emotionally dependent on other people's grief. I'm the angel nurse, the one who stays late, who holds hands during the worst moments, who never rushes families, who makes death dignified and beautiful. And it's destroying my own family. It started as genuine compassion. Year 3 or 4, I realized I was good at the death part. A lot of nurses struggle with it. The emotional weight, the family dynamics, the helplessness of watching someone slip away. But I found it meaningful, sacred even. Being present for someone's final moments felt like the most important thing I could do. Families noticed. They'd thank me tearfully, tell me I was an angel, that I'd made the worst moments of their lives more bearable. A few even wrote letters to my manager. Catherine treated my father with such dignity. She made us feel less alone. That felt good, really good, like I was doing something that mattered in a way nothing else in my life did. So I started gravitating toward the terminal cases. When I'd see a new admission with a poor prognosis, end-stage cancer, catastrophic stroke, multi-organ failure, I'd request that assignment. I told myself it was because I was good at it, because these patients deserved experienced nurses who wouldn't shy away from the hard stuff. Really, I was chasing the feeling of being needed in that profound, unrepeatable way. Year 7, I started staying past my shifts regularly. If a patient was declining and family was there, I'd stay. Just to see them through, I'd tell the next shift. Hours past my scheduled end time, sitting with grieving families, being their rock, their guide, their comfort. My husband started complaining. "You're never home on time. I can't plan anything because you're always just staying a little longer." I told him it was my calling, that these people needed me, that I couldn't just abandon them during the hardest moment of their lives. He asked why I could abandon our kids so easily. I didn't have an answer for that. The thing is, being with dying patients and their families felt easier than being with my own family. With the dying, I knew what to do. Explain medical processes, hold space for grief, offer tissues and tea, and quiet presence. There was a script, a role, clear boundaries. At home, there was just messiness. My daughter's teenage drama that I didn't know how to navigate, my son's questions I didn't know how to answer, my husband's resentment I didn't know how to fix. No clear protocol, no way to be the hero. Year 9, I realized I was prioritizing patient deaths over my own life events. My son's 7th grade awards ceremony, I stayed with a dying patient instead. My husband's work party, I stayed with a family through their father's last hours. Our anniversary dinner, canceled because I was holding a widow's hand in the ICU. Every time, I told myself these were emergencies, one-time things, that my family would understand because I was doing something important. But they were never one-time things. There was always another dying patient, always another grieving family, always another reason to stay. Year 10, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, stage 3. She needed support, rides to chemo, help around the house, someone to sit with her during the bad days. I worked my regular shifts, picked up extra shifts, stayed late to be with other people's dying mothers while mine went through chemo alone. My sister handled most of it. She'd call me frustrated. "Mom needs you. When can you come?" "I'm working," I'd say. "I'll come this weekend." But then something would come up at the hospital. Someone would be dying. Someone would need me. My mother never said anything, just got quieter, stopped asking for me. When she finished treatment, successful, thankfully, she had a small celebration. Family dinner, nothing big. I was scheduled to work, but could have requested the time off. Instead, I picked up an extra shift. "There's a patient who's declining. His family needs support," I told my sister. "Your family needs support. Your mother just survived cancer and you can't even show up for one dinner?" But showing up for my mother meant facing how absent I'd been, meant acknowledging that I'd chosen other people's families over my own. At the hospital, with people who were dying, I could be the hero. At home, I was just the daughter who hadn't been there. Year 11, my daughter Lily, she was 15, tried to talk to me about something. I could tell it was important. She had that look, that nervous energy. We were in the kitchen and she started, "Mom, I need to tell you something." My phone rang. Work. A patient's family was having trouble with end-of-life decisions, needed someone to talk them through it. I was off duty, but I answered anyway. "Can you give me a minute, honey?" I said to Lily. "This is important." I took the call, talked to the family for 45 minutes, helped them process their decision to withdraw care. Felt that familiar sense of purpose and meaning. When I came back, Lily was gone. Door closed, music playing. She didn't bring it up again. I found out 6 months later she'd been being bullied at school, had wanted to talk to me about it that day. Instead, she'd talked to her friends, the school counselor, her father, everyone but me. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked her when I found out. She looked at me with this expression I'll never forget. Not angry, just resigned. "Because you weren't there, Mom. You're never there. Even when you're standing right in front of me, you're somewhere else." She was right. I was always somewhere else. At the hospital, even when I was physically home, thinking about my patients, my families, the people who needed me. The people who needed me were dying. That was the key. They needed me for this limited, defined period, and then they were gone. Their gratitude was pure and complete. They weren't around long enough to be disappointed in me. My own family had to live with my absence every day, had to watch me give my best self to strangers while they got my leftovers. Last year, I attended 17 patient funerals. 17. Families I'd been with during their loved ones' final hours. They'd invited me, said it would mean so much if I came. I went to every single one. Took time off work, drove across the state, sat in churches and funeral homes with people I'd known for days or weeks. My son's championship basketball game was the same day as one of those funerals. I chose the funeral. "You don't even know these people," my husband said. "You knew them for 3 days while their mother was dying. But your son, your actual son, has been playing basketball for 6 years, and you can't show up for his biggest game?" "They need closure," I said. "I was with them during the hardest moment of their lives. My presence matters to them." "Your presence matters to your son," he said. "Or it used to. I think he's given up." He was 16, and he had given up. I could see it in how he stopped telling me about his games, stopped asking if I'd be there, stopped looking for me in the stands. My husband filed for divorce 4 months ago. Irreconcilable differences, the paper said. But really, it was just this. I'd chosen other people's families over my own, consistently, for years. "You cry more at patient funerals than you cried at your own father's," he said when he told me. "You spend hours with the families of people you barely know, but you can't spend 20 minutes hearing about your daughter's day? I'm providing comfort in their darkest hour. I'm making a difference." "You're hiding," he said. "It's easier to be perfect for dying strangers than to be human with us." He was right. It was easier. The dying and their families didn't expect me to be home for dinner, didn't need me to remember their schedules or preferences or inside jokes, didn't see all the ways I was failing. They just needed my compassion in that moment, and then they were gone. taking their gratitude and their perception of me as an angel with them. I'm working right now, night shift. I have a patient, Mr. Morrison, 83, and stage COPD, actively dying. His 3 daughters are here, taking turns sitting with him. The chaplain was here earlier. They're doing okay. They have each other. But I've barely left the room. I keep checking on them, asking if they need anything, offering to explain things they already understand. They're being polite, but I can tell they're fine. They don't need me hovering. I need to be here anyway. Need to feel like I'm doing something meaningful. Because when I go home in the morning, I'm going home to an empty apartment. My kids are with their father. They've made it clear they don't want to see me right now. Maybe ever. Lily is 18 now, leaving for college in 3 months, states away. She hasn't asked me to help her pack or shop for dorm supplies or any of the things mothers and daughters do together. She's doing it all with her father's girlfriend, a woman who actually shows up. My son barely speaks to me. When I text him, he responds with 1 or 2 words. Fine, okay, busy. Last week was his 17th birthday. I took the day off, actually took it off, didn't even go to the hospital. Showed up at my ex-husband's house with a gift, a cake, ready to celebrate. My son looked at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered into his party. Thanks for coming, he said politely, the way you'd thank an acquaintance, not your mother. I stayed for an hour, made small talk with my ex-husband's family, watched my son open presents, laugh with his friends, blow out candles. He was 17 years old and I didn't know anything about his life. Didn't know his friends' names, didn't know what he wanted to study in college, didn't know what made him happy. I knew everything about Mrs. Alvarez's daughter, though. Knew she was 42, worked as a teacher, was divorced, had 2 kids of her own. Knew all of that from our 3-hour conversation while her mother died. I can tell you about dozens of families I've sat with during the worst days of their lives, but I can't tell you the last real conversation I had with my own children. My phone just buzzed. Text from the charge nurse. Family in room 412 having a hard time with the DNR decision. Can you talk to them? I'm not assigned to that patient. It's not my job right now, but I'm already standing up, already heading toward that room, because this is what I do. This is who I am. The nurse who's there for everyone's family, except her own. The angel who's actually just a coward, hiding behind other people's grief. Mr. Morrison's daughters are talking quietly, in the corner. They're okay. They have each other. My kids used to have me. Now they have each other, and their father, and his girlfriend, and everyone else who actually showed up. I'm walking toward room 412, toward another family that needs me, another opportunity to be the hero, the angel, the one who makes unbearable moments bearable, another opportunity to feel like I matter, even though the only people I should have mattered to have already learned to live without me.
I'm not supposed to be here. My shift ended 4 hours ago. But I'm sitting in the parking lot, watching the ICU windows on the 3rd floor, and I can't make myself leave. Because right now, night shift is taking care of my patients, and they might be making mistakes. I'm Rebecca Torres, ICU nurse for 11 years, and for the past 2 years, I've been staying 4-5 hours past my shift every single day to secretly check other nurses' work. Redocumenting charts, verifying medication administrations, double-checking IV rates, making sure nothing goes wrong. Because if something goes wrong, it's my fault for not catching it. I know how this sounds. I know it's not normal, but you don't understand. People die when we make mistakes, and I can't just trust that everyone else is being as careful as they should be. It started small. Year 9, I noticed a charting error on one of my patients after shift change. The night nurse had documented a blood pressure reading that didn't match the monitor's recorded values. Not a huge deal, probably just transposed numbers. But it bothered me. So I stayed an extra hour to fix it, corrected the documentation, made sure everything was accurate. The next week, I noticed another nurse had hung a medication at the wrong rate. I caught it before any harm was done, adjusted it, documented appropriately. You didn't have to stay, the night nurse said. I would have caught that. Maybe she would have, but maybe she wouldn't. And it was my patient. my responsibility. After that, I started staying just to check before I left. 30 minutes, an hour, review my patient's charts one more time, make sure everything was accurate, and scan the monitors to verify all the settings were correct. It gave me peace of mind. Let me sleep without lying awake wondering if I'd documented something wrong, if I'd missed something. Year 10, I expanded my checking. Not just my patients, all of the patients in my pod. Just quick scans of the charts, the monitor settings, the IV pumps, looking for errors that could hurt someone. I found them. Lots of them. Small things, usually. Wrong times documented, medications charted before they were given, IV rates that were off by a few milliliters. I fixed them. Quietly. Didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to get people in trouble. I just corrected the errors and felt this sense of satisfaction that I'd prevented potential problems. My shifts got longer. 2 hours past my scheduled time. 3 hours. I told my husband I was staying to help with admissions, to cover breaks. Really, I was doing my rounds, checking every chart in every pod, making sure everyone was doing their job correctly. You need to come home. When my husband had been working 12-hour shifts that turned into 15, 16 hours, you're exhausted all the time. But I couldn't come home. Not until I knew everything was okay. Not until I had verified that no one had made any mistakes that would hurt a patient. The anxiety started around then. This constant, gnawing worry that something terrible was happening when I wasn't there. That night shift was making mistakes I couldn't catch. That someone would die because I hadn't stayed long enough to check everything. I started having panic attacks on my days off, sitting at home, heart racing, convinced that something had gone wrong, that a patient had coded because someone hung the wrong medication or missed a critical vital sign change. I'd call the unit. "Just checking in," I'd say casually. "How's Mr. Patterson doing? And the new admission in bed 7? The charge nurse sounded confused. "Rebecca, you're off today. Everything's fine. You don't need to worry." But I did need to worry, because what if everything wasn't fine and I just didn't know it yet? 6 months ago, things escalated. I arrived for my shift and discovered that one of my patients from the previous day had developed a serious complication overnight. Sepsis, missed for several hours because the nurse hadn't recognized the early signs. The patient survived, but barely, and I kept thinking, if I'd stayed longer, if I'd checked on him one more time before I left, if I'd made sure the night nurse understood his risk factors. After that, I stopped leaving at all, really. I'd clock out after my 12 hours, hospital policy, they get weird about unauthorized overtime, but I'd stay, unpaid, just checking. I'd review every patient's chart from my shift, then I'd review night shift's documentation in real time, making sure they were catching things, documenting appropriately. If I saw something concerning, I'd quietly fix it. Sometimes I'd redo things. If a nurse's note was too brief, I'd add details I remembered from the patient's care. If medication timing seemed off, I'd adjust it. If IV rates weren't quite right, I'd correct them in the documentation. I was helping, making sure patients got the best care, preventing errors. At least, that's what I told myself.
3 months ago, I got written up. Practicing outside your scope and unauthorized documentation modification. Someone had noticed that I was editing charts on my days off, accessing patient records when I wasn't assigned to them. My manager sat me down. "Rebecca, I know you care about your patients, but you can't change other nurses' documentation. You can't be accessing charts when you're not scheduled to work." "But there were errors," I said. "I was just fixing." "That's not your job. If you see an error, you report it through proper channels. You don't just rewrite people's work." I tried to explain about the mistakes I'd caught, about the patients I'd potentially saved, about how I was just trying to make sure everything was perfect. She looked at me with concern. Not anger, concern. "Rebecca, have you talked to anyone about anxiety? Because this level of checking, it's not healthy." I told her I was fine, that I just had high standards. She mandated that I couldn't access patient charts outside my assigned shifts. Couldn't stay past my scheduled time without explicit authorization. Required me to see employee health for a mental health screening. I went. Told the counselor I was stressed but managing. answered her questions carefully, making sure I didn't sound as obsessed as I felt. She cleared me to return to work with a recommendation for therapy. I didn't go to therapy. Instead, I got worse. Now I can only check my own patients during my actual shifts. So I've started doing something else. I shadow night shift. I come in 2 hours before my shift starts. Tell them I'm just getting coffee, getting organized. Really, I'm walking through the unit, observing, watching to make sure they're doing everything correctly. During my shift, I listen obsessively to everything happening around me. Other nurses' conversations, alarm patterns, phone calls. If I hear something concerning, I find a reason to walk past that room, to glance at the monitors, to make sure everything's okay. After my shift, I sit in the parking lot for hours watching the windows. Sometimes I come back into the building, say I forgot something, walk through the unit one more time. I'm averaging 18 hours a day at the hospital. I'm not getting paid for most of it. I barely sleep, maybe 4 hours a night. And even then, I wake up panicking, checking my phone to make sure no one's called about a crisis. My marriage is over. My husband moved out 6 weeks ago, said he couldn't watch me destroy myself anymore, that I needed professional help and he couldn't force me to get it. You're having a breakdown, Rebecca. You can't see it, but everyone else can. You're not eating, you're not sleeping, you're at the hospital constantly, even when you're not working. This isn't healthy. This isn't normal. But what's the alternative? Just trust that everyone else is doing their job correctly? Just hope that no one makes a fatal mistake? I can't do that. I've seen too many errors. I know how quickly things can go wrong. Last week, I had a panic attack during my shift, full-blown, hyperventilating, chest pain, thought I was having a heart attack. The ER cleared me, anxiety attack, they said, gave me Ativan, told me I needed to see my doctor, maybe take some time off. I came back the next day because what if something happened and I wasn't there? My manager pulled me aside yesterday. Rebecca, we need to talk. Multiple staff members have expressed concerns. You're watching them, following them, checking their work without permission. It's making people uncomfortable. I'm just making sure I know what you're doing, and I'm telling you that you need to stop. You need to take medical leave. You need to get help. The patients need me, I said. The patients need you to be healthy. Right now, you're not. You're a liability. A liability! After everything I've done to keep people safe, after all the errors I've caught, all the problems I've prevented. I'm sitting in my car right now. It's 2 a.m. My shift ended at 7 p.m. I've been here for 7 hours watching the windows. I've gone inside 3 times, once to use the bathroom, twice because I convinced myself I saw something wrong on a monitor from here and needed to check. The security guard knows me now. Doesn't even question it anymore when I badge in hours after my shift ends. I know I need help. Part of me knows this isn't normal, isn't sustainable. I've lost 15 pounds in 2 months. I'm exhausted all the time. I can't concentrate. I'm making mistakes, the very thing I'm trying to prevent because I'm so sleep-deprived and anxious. But the thought of not checking, of just going home and trusting that everything will be okay, I can't. I physically cannot do it. My phone is buzzing. Text from my ex-husband. Please call me. Your sister is worried. We're all worried. Please get help. I'm not answering. Because if I talk to them, they'll try to convince me to take leave, to stop coming to the hospital, to let go. And if I let go, someone will die. I know it. I know that the moment I stop checking, the moment I stop verifying everyone's work, something terrible will happen and it will be my fault. There's movement on the 3rd floor. Someone going into a patient room. I can't see clearly from here, but are they moving fast? Is that an emergency? Should I go check? My hands are shaking. They shake all the time now. My manager noticed during my last shift, asked if I was okay. I told her I was just cold. I have a mandatory meeting with HR tomorrow morning. Fitness for duty evaluation, the email said. They're going to force me on medical leave, maybe even require a psychiatric evaluation before I can return. I should be scared. I should be worried about my job, my license. Instead, I'm just panicking about who's going to check everyone's work while I'm gone. Who's going to catch the errors? Who's going to make sure the patients are safe? It's 2:13 a.m. My shift starts in less than 5 hours. I should go home, sleep, shower, eat something. But someone just turned on a light in room 314. Is that my patient from yesterday? Why are they in there? Is something wrong? I'm getting out of my car, walking back toward the building, just to check one more time. Just to make sure everything's okay. Just one more time.
I worked Christmas last year, and Thanksgiving, and Easter, and my daughter's 16th birthday, and the day my son graduated 8th grade, and every single holiday, weekend, and special occasion for the past 4 years. Nobody makes me. I volunteer. I'm Lisa Hernandez, ICU nurse for 12 years. And I've worked an average of 72 hours a week for the last 4 years because being at the hospital is easier than being home. Easier than facing what my marriage has become. Easier than admitting I have a 17-year-old daughter who barely knows me and a 14-year-old son who's given up trying. It started when things got bad with my husband. Really bad. Year 8 of our marriage. Year 8 of my nursing career. We'd been fighting constantly. Money, housework, his drinking, my hours. Every conversation turned into an argument. Every night together felt like walking through a minefield. So I started picking up extra shifts, just 1 or 2 a week at first. Time and a half pay, and I got to avoid the tension at home. Win-win, I told myself. Except the extra shifts meant I was home even less, which meant when I was home, the fights were worse, which meant I picked up more shifts. Within 6 months, I was working 5 or 6 12-hour shifts a week instead of my scheduled 3. My manager loved it. We're chronically understaffed, like every hospital, and I was the reliable one who always said yes. Need Christmas Eve covered? Lisa will do it. Need someone for a double on Saturday? Call Lisa. At first, I told myself I was doing it for the money. We had debt, credit cards, my student loans, his truck payment. The overtime helped. But even after we paid off the cards, even after we refinanced, I kept picking up shifts. Because the real reason wasn't the money. The real reason was that at work, I knew what I was supposed to do. Check vitals, administer meds, document, respond to alarms, clear tasks with clear outcomes. At home, I had no idea how to fix us, how to talk to my husband without it turning into a fight, how to connect with my kids when I'd been absent for so much of their lives. So I just stayed at work. Year 10, my daughter Sophia was in a school play. She had the lead role, Maria, in West Side Story. She'd been practicing for months. I was supposed to have opening night off. I'd requested it 6 weeks in advance. The day of the performance, one of the nurses called in sick. My manager texted, "I know you have plans tonight, but is there any way?" I said yes. I told myself it was just opening night, that she had 3 more performances, that I'd make one of those. I texted my husband that I had to work, that I was sorry, that I'd be there for the next show. Sophia cried. My husband said I was making a choice, that I was choosing work over our daughter. I got defensive, said someone had to pay the bills, that I couldn't help that we were short-staffed. The truth was simpler. Going to that play meant sitting next to my husband in uncomfortable silence, making small talk with other parents who'd ask how we were doing, pretending we were a happy family. Work was easier.
I never made it to any of her other performances. Always had a reason. Always had a shift. She stopped telling me about school after that. Stopped showing me her grades, her art projects, her college application essays. When I asked about her day, she'd say, "Fine," and disappeared to her room. My son Miguel's 8th grade graduation was on a Wednesday afternoon. I'd known about it for months, but the week before, my manager asked if I could cover a string of day shifts. Someone was out on medical leave. They were despot. I said yes. I told myself I'd leave early, that I'd make the ceremony. But there was a complex patient, a fresh post-op who kept having pressure issues, and I couldn't just leave in the middle of stabilizing him. By the time I got to the school, the parking lot was emptying. Miguel saw me pulling in as he was leaving with his father. He didn't even look surprised, just got in the car without a word. That night, I heard him crying in his room. I stood outside his door for 10 minutes, trying to find the courage to knock, to apologize, to explain. But what would I say? That I'd rather take care of strangers than show up for him? I went back to work the next day. My husband asked for separation last year. 17 years of marriage, and he said he couldn't do it anymore, that I'd checked out years ago, that I was just using the house as a place to sleep between shifts. He wasn't wrong. "The kids ask why you don't live here," he said. We were in the kitchen, one of the rare times I was actually home and awake. "They don't understand why you're never around. Miguel asked me last week if we're divorced." I felt something crack in my chest. "We're not divorced." "Aren't we? You're here maybe 3 nights a week. You miss everything that matters. Sophia's college visits, McGill's soccer games, parent-teacher conferences. When was the last time you ate dinner with us?" I couldn't remember. Honestly, couldn't remember. "I'm working. I'm providing for this family." "We don't need the money, Lisa. We need you. But you'd rather be at the hospital." He was right. I would rather be at the hospital because at the hospital, I'm good at my job. I'm competent. I'm valued. At home, I'm a failure as a wife and mother, and every moment there reminds me of that. The separation became official 3 months ago. He got the house. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, 15 minutes from the hospital. The kids stay with him during the week, me every other weekend, except I usually end up working at least one day of my weekends anyway. Last month was Sophia's 17th birthday. I'd promised, sworn to her, that I'd be there for her birthday dinner, that nothing would interfere. She'd planned it for weeks, made reservations at her favorite restaurant. I was scheduled to work that day, but it was supposed to end at 3 p.m. Plenty of time to go home, shower, change, and make the 6 p.m. reservation. At 2:45, we got a trauma. Motorcycle accident. Critical. And I stayed. I told myself I'd stay just until he was stable, just until we got him to the OR. But there were complications. By the time I looked at my phone, it was 7:30. 16 missed calls, 10 texts from my husband ranging from, "Where are you?" to, "How could you do this to her?" to, "Don't bother coming. She doesn't want to see you." The last text was from Sophia. "I'm done waiting for you, Mom." I tried calling. No answer. I drove to the restaurant anyway, still in my scrubs. They were gone. I sat in my car in the parking lot and told myself I'd saved a man's life that night. That had to count for something. But it didn't. It doesn't. Because here's the truth. I didn't stay for that patient. I stayed because I wanted to. Because the moment I got that trauma notification, I felt relieved. Relieved I had an excuse to miss the dinner. Relieved I could text, "I'm so sorry, emergency at work," and make it sound noble instead of what it really was. Cowardice. My husband called me the next day. "Sophia says she's not doing weekends at your place anymore. She's 17. Legally, she can choose. And Miguel's following her lead." I'll talk to them, I said. I'll explain. Explain what? That you care more about your patients than your own children? They already know that, Lisa. They've known it for years. I haven't seen them in 6 weeks. I text them every day. Sophia leaves me on red. Miguel responds with one-word answers. Last week I saw my daughter's Instagram post. She'd posted photos from her senior portraits. Beautiful pictures I didn't know existed. The caption said, "Thankful for everyone who showed up." The comments were full of people congratulating her, saying how proud they were. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't mentioned. It was like I didn't exist. I'm working right now, actually. Night shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. It's 2:30 in the morning. My patients are stable. I've been sitting in the break room for 45 minutes, scrolling through my kids' social media, looking at their lives like a stranger. Miguel Meade, honor roll. When did that happen? Sophia got accepted to 3 colleges. Which ones? When did she apply? I don't know. I wasn't there. My manager just asked if I can cover a double tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 24 hours straight, with only a 4-hour overlap between shifts. I said yes. Because what else would I do? Go home to my empty apartment? Sit with the silence and the reality of what I've destroyed? At least here, I'm useful. At least here, people need me. Even if the people who needed me most were the ones I abandoned. There's a text from my husband. Miguel has a basketball game Thursday at 6. He asked if you'd come. I told him you probably couldn't. Prove me wrong. I'm scheduled to work Thursday. Day shift, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The game is 40 minutes away. I'd have to leave exactly on time, probably hit traffic. I should say I'll be there. I should move heaven and earth to be there. But I'm already thinking of reasons I might have to stay late. A late admission, an unstable patient, something that would give me an excuse. Because the thought of sitting in those bleachers, watching my son play, having to face what I've become, it's terrifying. What if he ignores me? What if Sophia shows up and won't even look at me? What if I sit there and they all see me for what I am? A mother who chose 12-hour shifts over her children's childhoods. A wife who preferred the company of dying strangers to her own husband. A woman who's worked herself into complete isolation and still can't stop. I'm picking up my phone, opening the schedule app, looking at Thursday. I should tell my manager I need that evening off. I should text my husband and say I'll be there. But instead, I'm looking at Friday's schedule to see if anyone needs that shift covered too. Because this is who I've become, and I don't know how to be anyone else.